And welcome to the universityprepsoccer.com website. This is just a short video on who we are and a little bit about the website and just a little bit about why we're different and how you can use the site to help find educational funding through the sport of soccer. We'll say, okay, who we are. We're just a group of people that formed in 2008. A group of players and parents, and we formed an organization to understand how to market our soccer skills to acquire educational funding. We weren't all superstar players, and although we focused a lot on the conventional method of recruitment, we also looked at creating our own scholarships, which we'll talk about as we go through this video. We understood the process of finding a roster spot on a college team was not a soccer process. We saw it as a sales process of selling our players' soccer skill to an institution that was willing to pay for it. We found we had a lot more success with finding funding through this method than the other teams around us that were using soccer to try and find educational funding. All of our players received scholarships, but we also found many other methods of funding also. We formed female and male soccer travel teams that played in the top 3 tiers of the U.S. soccer pyramid and hired USSDA, MLS, and ECNL club coaches. We'll talk about that a bit later. But essentially, we didn't necessarily really need, and you don't necessarily need to do that. We did play the top soccer pyramid teams, and we videoed them, and we sent out those videos all to target schools that we knew would be best for our players. Here you can see a group of players with some of the clubs that we work with in Seattle, some of the pro players off the U.S. national team, and some players out of Europe that had come in to help our organization, and the MLS club in Seattle, their coaching staff, etc. We understood finding a roster spot on a college team was not a soccer process, rather it was a sales process of selling our players' soccer skill to an institution that is willing to pay for it. And that's super important for you to understand. Don't just do what everybody else does, because most of the educational funding is conjunctional. It's tied to other funding resources. So in simple terms, like I said, we built a market-oriented, fact-based resume for all our players, and these were videos that were sent to target schools because they were what the coaches were looking for. They were very successful at bringing offers for our players. So what does it mean for you? Well, you can use our learnings to help finding a place to play, and funding to help you with your education. We started with 46 players, and we worked with 150 players in Seattle, and then basically there's been about 8,000 players that have checked our website. So we didn't just stop there, however. We kept watch on all the 8,000 players and families that used our site to amass the most comprehensive site on the net for those players and parents who wish to acquire educational funding using the sport of soccer, or association football as it's known outside of North America. This process has changed a lot in the past 10 years, and players are getting smarter with their recruitment resumes, but there are still many schools who struggle to find recruits. You just need to know how to find them, and there's something else that's even more important. There are many more opportunities out there on top of the university teams on top of the varsity teams, inside the university. But it's up to you to build those opportunities for yourself. A college coach isn't going to do them. And that's why we'd like to share our learnings with you. We find there's a lot more opportunity than what people think there are. According to scholarshipstats.com, there are 900,000 youth players in the U.S. looking to find a scholarship to play. That's a lot of players. Therefore, the chances of acquiring a soccer scholarship is 99-1 for boys and 46-1 for girls. But we had no problems finding roster spots. Most of our players were practicing with their college clubs by the end of their junior grade 11 year. They would practice with university teams, and even before they graduated in grade 12, they pretty much knew where they were going. They didn't necessarily play for the specific university they were playing with. They often used college coaches' references to go to other organizations where they knew they could get some funding. We saw that most of the organizations in the soccer world just not thinking out through the recruitment or the funding process. We saw teams going to events that featured large amounts of trialists with opportunities for very few trialists. Let's look at one of those closely. One of the events we saw in the USA was held in the state of Florida. It boasts more than 300 teams that come to it every year. Claims it has 200 college coaches. So let's do the math on that. Let's just stop and think this out. There are 300 teams multiplied by 20 players per team. There's 6,000 people at this event. But only 1/3 of the U.S. schools have scholarships, and many schools can only give partial scholarships. So if there's 70 schools that have scholarships and they each give 6 scholarships, that's highly unlikely. Got to remember that NCAA clubs can only give like 9 to 10 scholarships. There's not a lot of scholarships out there. And females, it's a little higher, 14. So when you think about a soccer scholarships, we just kind of did the math. It's 420 scholarships for 6,000 trialists. We didn't like those numbers at all. So it's all about supply and demand and understanding where that demand is. So let's look at this. Suppose you wanted to sell an orange. Do you take it to a farmer who has thousands of oranges and sell it to him? No. You'd sell it to a person who really needed an orange and a person that would actually pay you for that orange. So this is the nature of all markets. The market for college sport is no different than any other market, but most people just don't see it that way, just blindly go and do what everybody else does. The markets for soccer skill are, like I said, are based on supply and demand, but the vast majority of the potential recruits will not look in the correct places for the funding that it's out there. They'll do just what everyone else is doing and get the same results. We were different because we heard immediately from our 84 college coaches that many of the more than 5,600 colleges in North America have very small recruiting budgets. They're not out there with thousands of dollars looking for players. They don't have the money to do that. Most college teams don't. We understood that how important it was that what was presented to the varsity coach was a resume that was something they were looking for. So we use the life skills programs for athletes the US NCAA uses to help build a resume that college coaches were actually looking for. We were also different because we knew the code of conduct is more important to people who will provide educational funding than any other part of the process. That means treating coaches with respect and recruiters with respect is more important than even the tryout itself. We are a different organization because we know that finding a school that will provide a player with an education that will provide a good income for their lives is actually more important than just getting a roster spot on a team. We're different because we understand the school needs to fit the player, not the player fit the school. Super important. We are different because we know that most of the funding that is available for soccer players is not soccer-based funding, but it's funding that can be acquired through participation in the sport. That means the scholarship or bursary or trust fund or co-op program or state funding or provincial funding or religious funding or union-based funding, etc., etc. There's so much funding out there that is awarded to a player. Most of the time the player gets the award because they showed a strong sense of life skills that they received through the sport participation. That means there's a lot more money out there than just soccer money. It's soccer-based money. And it's not hard to find, really. We are different because we do not charge fees or something any player or parent can just do for themselves. Most of this you can just do for yourself. You don't need to hire someone to do it. That means that none of our players lost their scholarships because they used an agent to find their scholarships. That can be against league rules. We're different because we understand the player can usually find a place or create a place to play even if they're not strong enough to play varsity. Nobody gets this, and it means there's so much opportunity out there. We encourage people to participate in a sport because of the health and life benefits that it actually provides. We are different because we know it's great to go to showcases. We did that ourselves, and showcases can be very useful, but they're only useful if they're used properly. They're often expensive, and better resources may be out there for the player. Not all players are super talented, but many just enjoy playing. We're different because we want to see all players play and use soccer to attract funding, even if they're not strong enough to play on a varsity team, or just the education that the training that they're taking doesn't allow us to play varsity, where they don't have the time to play varsity. There's still soccer funding out there for them. So how you can use our site to fund educational funding, there are several ways. There's a high-level recruitment path that's listed in easy steps. It's a high level. There's links to all the North American collegiate soccer clubs, links to the cities and semi-pro opportunities for the area. And if you're really serious about playing college soccer and you want to show the coach that, you can take a course through a different site that we can link you up with that will give you an edge. It's not very expensive. I think it's $30. And it just shows you a huge amount of other places that you can look and different ways that you can increase your value to the college coach. Anyways, we hope you've enjoyed the video, and there's about 26 videos that will follow this as we go into different parts of it, the process, and we just hope that you will join us, and good luck with your soccer career.